Greetings and welcome back to my channel, people. Sometime I go way down in some things and look. And as the Lion King, Africa in me, although I'm not in Africa at the moment. Anyway, I see where an Englishman boast about how him soon be the richest man in the world because he will take over a whole part of Africa and make it for him own country. Not a part of South Africa. The way he get it divided up and he have all the DA already in his pocket. And him are the foremost person in a fighter now. But I wonder, people, what are the laws governing citizenship for people where for naturalized citizens, people who got people country and married to a citizen there, spend some time there and then get themselves in the politics. Can those people be stripped of citizenship? Can they be charged for treason? What are the constitution them government they have? Is them constitution the British or European led? Or it in line with the country themselves? And them people make it for secure for themselves. Why? Because if your man go on people country, I can't believe no black man can go on no country. But him will divide if it's slightly white led. Can't do it in no European country, can't go on no state of America. None of the mainly black state of America no. Like a black man can't get up and bout him and cry for no independence. Make a black man bout him and cry for independence of French quarters or even the part of Mississippi where flood out ever so often. Make them people that claim said them a try we no get no help. Make them claim said them a try for go independence then and do it for themselves no. And try to find out who the leader you're in charge for something. So how this man can go on the people in place and start determine, say man, test them laws. And show off about how him arrogant and him English and what you gonna do. People, make a go through and listen to it. Listen. Master George, I go tell you what I go on for with it.
I am also cantankerous, belligerent, single-minded and arrogant. I am English. Phil Craig. Phil Craig is a family man, a serial entrepreneur and a co-founder of the Cape Independence Advocacy Group. He is working towards the creation of the Cape of Good Hope, a first world country at Africa's southern tip bringing freedom, security and prosperity to all who live there, regardless of their race, religion and culture. The silent march towards self-determination in the Western Cape. An independence advocacy group believes that a growing number of the party's MPs and leaders in the province support autonomy or secession. What does the ANC have to say about the Western Cape breaking away from South Africa? Over the past 18 months, Cape independence has become a hot topic. We have heard the opinions of the various independence groups such as the Cape Independence Advocacy Group, CIAG, and Cape ZIT, who are promoting the idea. We have heard from numerous political analysts offering comments from both sides of the aisle. We have had the legal complexities explained to us by competing experts. We have heard the political views of the Democratic Alliance, the Freedom Front Plus, the Cape Party, the Good Party, the African Christian Democratic Party, and the Cape Colored Congress. But the ANC has been mute. That is not to say that, behind closed doors, they have not been discussing it. We have it on good authority that it has been on the agenda of at least one National Executive Committee meeting, and privately, a high-ranking ANC official recently said the ANC fears two things: a tax revolt and Cape independence. It was therefore of great interest when, on the 16th of August, the Cape Argus carried a quote from Cameron Dugmore, leader of the ANC in the Western Cape. The newspaper was reporting on a recent poll on Cape independence, which showed that 58% of Western Cape voters now favor a referendum to determine whether the Western Cape should secede from South Africa and form a new sovereign state. The unfortunate thing about the statement by Peter Murray, MPL for the Freedom Front Plus, is that it contributes to the illusion that the Western Cape can become a separate country. This is not going to happen. The ANC in the Western Cape is deeply unpopular. In 2019, it obtained just 28.6% of the provincial vote. The poll Dugmore was responding to showed that 89% of Western Cape voters thought South Africa was heading in the wrong direction, and that 73% of voters thought that runs the Western Cape better than the ANC. Somewhat embarrassingly for him, this included the majority of his own voters. This begs the question, on what basis and on whose authority does Dugmore state that Cape independence is not going to happen? Is this a personal opinion? He certainly is not speaking on behalf of the majority of Western Cape voters. Is he speaking on behalf of the ANC? Is this now their official position? Where does the democratic will of the Western Cape people fit in? What about their right to self-determination, which is guaranteed under international law, to which South Africa is a signatory, as well as in the country's constitution? The has already begun preparations for a provincial referendum. On the 24th of June, it published its intention to bring a private member's bill before Parliament in the Government Gazette. Sometime soon, there is going to be a referendum on Cape independence. It is now time for the ANC to break its silence, and to say what they intend to do about a province that wants to vote on whether to leave South Africa and instead chart its own path. Lessons from Ngwenya for Cape independence. The spectre of South African impotence as Jacob Zuma brazenly defies an order from the highest court in the land, cheered on by an illegal mob gathered in contravention of lockdown rules the government has just strengthened, has not gone unnoticed in the Western Cape. The ANC government would do well to remind itself that it governs the Western Cape with the consent of the majority. Since 1994, most voters in the province have not voted for the ANC and, in 2019, only 28.6% of them wanted an ANC government. The ANC has presided over rampant corruption, gross incompetence, the collapse of many state-owned entities, runaway unemployment, and it is intent on using its constitutional majority to force through policies that are unpopular in the Western Cape. It has been allowed to do so because the people of the Western Cape have played by the rules, even when those rules have seen decisions made to which they are opposed. Our legal system is now on trial. Most people do not have the professional insight to examine the minutiae of complex legal arguments, but they can see which way the wind is blowing. They know the economic freedom fighters Julius Malema should not be helping to select judges for the Constitutional Court. They know Judge John Rook should not be Judge President of the Western Cape. They know Judge Roland Hendricks, who presided over the infamous Coligny Show trial, should not subsequently have been promoted to Deputy Judge President of the Northwest. They will have heard Koos Mallan, Professor of Public Law at the University of Pretoria, declare that it is no longer possible to get an ideologically fair judgment at the Constitutional Court. Last week, jurist Martin van Staden expounded on this, explaining in layman's terms how he believes transformation and affirmative action, as currently implemented, are unconstitutional. There is no prospect of ever getting the Constitutional Court to acknowledge this, he says, because the law and the judges' political ideologies conflict, and their ideologies take precedence. Desperate for any glimmer of hope, South Africans are given to leap for joy at the sight of a single swallow, deluding themselves that it may signal the onset of summer. It never does, and hope is soon extinguished. The Constitutional Court order against Zuma was one such glimmer. The usual cheerleaders were declaring we had finally crossed our Rubicon, again. Justice had prevailed. President Cyril Ramaphosa's long game was reaching its zenith. The reality was far less glorious. Within 4 days the Concourt was going to blink. There have been too many whys after the event justifications of the Concourt's apparent about turn, while the pedants argue over rescission orders and the merits of a minority judgment. Although each may have merit, they simply serve as misdirections from what should be obvious. After months of thumbing his nose at the Zondo Commission and then the Constitutional Court, openly defying our constitutional order, flaunting his invincibility, knowing that with a nod in the right direction he could summon a legion of so-called radical economic transformation foot soldiers and stoke the flames of racial and tribal conflict, the Constitutional Court called time on Zuma's antics. In doing so, it was rightly applauded for the manner in which it eliminated wiggle room from the past master of the Stalingrad defense. He had 5 days to submit himself into custody and, if he did not, the police had 3 days to take him into custody. So, what changed? Zuma's age and state of health certainly did not. Neither did his willingness to appear before Acting Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, nor his criticism of the Constitutional Court. Instead, an armed and unruly crowd gathered and threatened that they would violently resist the forces of law and order. One man's quest for an independent Western Cape. South Africa is in one almighty mess and, as individual citizens, many of us feel despondent and powerless. We know what needs to be done, at least at a broad strokes level, but we also know that the government has no intention of doing it. There is an overwhelming temptation to throw one's hands up in the air and give up. We must not, under any circumstances, do that. As an individual you have more power than you could ever imagine. As part of a bigger collective, you can bring this government to its knees. More than that, you have a moral obligation to act and to act decisively. I am drawn to cantankerous, belligerent, arrogant, single-minded individuals who, when others resigned themselves to their fate, took life by the scruff of its neck and changed the world. Winston Churchill, an alcoholic and opium user, said, "History shall be kind to me for I intend to write it." Thereafter, he did exactly that. Margaret Thatcher said, "There are still people in my party who believe in consensus politics. I regard them as quislings, as traitors." On another occasion she said, "Defeat. I do not recognize the meaning of the word. If it is once again 1 against 48, then I am very sorry for the 48. Mahatma Gandhi said, "First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win." Significantly, he also said, "Whatever you do may seem insignificant to you, but it is most important that you do it." Helen Zille may not have been able to turn a phrase quite so eloquently as the others, but cantankerous, belligerent, single-minded and arrogant. Perhaps, and I love her for it. The success of the Western Cape did not happen by chance. What about you? Are you going to be silently written into the footnotes of history? Not me. I am with Winston, Maggie, Mahatma and Helen. I have had enough. I love this country, and I love the people who live here. I love the landscapes and I love the cultures, the humor and the languages. I am not going to sit back and watch a bunch of common thieves or racial nationalists steal my children's future from under my nose. My children are Afrikaans and this is their home. They can trace their lineage back generations on this soil, and no one is going to tell me this land doesn't belong to them, or that they have anything to be ashamed of. If your children are Xhosa or Zulu, Malay, Khoisan or Griqua, English, Italian or Chinese, it doesn't matter. If you live here legally, then this is your home too. In December 2019, Dominee Benny van Rensburg stood on the pulpit in the Moeda Kirk in Wellington and told the congregation that our land was deeply troubled and that our prayers were needed. He said God would help the people of South Africa, but he expected us to do more than pray. He expected us to get up out of the church pews and to do something. He said we all know what we are being called to do. For me it was a defining moment. As my wife will confirm, I am also cantankerous, belligerent, single-minded and arrogant. I am British. I wasn't born here, and until that day, I had convinced myself it wasn't my place to lead the fight. I had long had enough of the ANC and of watching my adopted country sliding into disorder and chaos, however. On that day, on that church bench, I made it my place. Less than 100 days later, the Cape Independence Advocacy Group, CIAG, was formed. My co-founders and I debated who must be the spokesperson. Could it really be me, with my obvious British accent, a white, middle-class male to boot? Critics constantly refer to my heritage, and that is okay. I am who I am and make no apologies for it. This is relevant because I did it because you didn't. Yes, I mean you. Fixing South Africa is your job too. You may or may not agree with me that an independent Western Cape is the answer. I contend, for the people of the Western Cape, it is our only viable solution, and I intend to move hell and high water to see it happen. If you differ with me, that is okay. But you have to do something. We all have to do something. Accepting the reality of our situation. You need to accept two fundamental realities. The government of South Africa is your enemy. It has an agenda, which will leave it stinking rich, and more of the rest of us increasingly poor. Whereas politicians and ministers earn multi-million rand salaries, unemployment is at an all-time high, and rising. When I first came to South Africa, I assumed Zimbabwe would serve as the ultimate reminder to the ANC of the folly of naked African nationalism and their national democratic revolution. I now know they just don't care. To the ANC, and the F, Zimbabwe represents a victory, not a failure. Sun Tzu said, an evil enemy will burn his own nation to the ground. To rule over the ashes. The, as the main opposition party, must also be held accountable. It is its job to hold the line and to bring change. Churchill also said, it is not enough that we do our best, sometimes we must do what is required. I am a vocal critic of the. I am the voter. In the Western Cape it has been an infinitely better government than the ANC, which is why it is currently serving its third straight term as the provincial government. But when Churchill said doing our best is not enough, he could be talking straight to the. It fiddles while Rome burns. It has the power and capacity to turn South Africa on its head, but is just too timid, too conservative, too conventional, to do what is required. If we don't start holding the to account, it will be as complicit as the ANC in South Africa's demise. Changing your reality. The government must be resisted in every possible legal and peaceful way. It must be made to feel the utter frustration that we feel. Every plan it makes must be defied with all our might, until the government wants to pull its hair out, not us ours. If you don't know what a work to rule is, find out. If you want proof of the power we hold in our hands, look no further than the Gauteng tolling project. Who has sleepless nights over that, the populace or the politicians? Let's look at some examples of things that you can do. Are you fed up with racism and racial classification? Opt out. Every time you are asked to provide your race, either refuse, or where it is a digital form and you cannot, tick Black African. There is no legal test for race, you are self-identifying. If you run a business and all your employees and directors happen to self-identify as Black African too, then B can work for you. If the person you want to hire identifies as Black African, regardless of how they may physically appear, great, hire them. If the government wants to keep up racial classification, let us make them bring back the pencil test. The system only works when you and I opt in. Gwen Ngwenya of the says she randomly ticks the racial classification boxes whenever they are presented, hoping that she will be taken to court, but knowing that she never will. If you are a homeowner and your municipality is corrupt or dysfunctional, stop paying your rates. I once fell out with mine, so I wrote to it telling it that I wouldn't be paying my rates until it addressed my specific issue. The municipality ignored me, but I didn't pay my rates for 4 years. On the anniversary of my initial letter I sent a reminder, pointing out that I hadn't paid now for a year, and that I was willing to pay, but only when the municipality fixed the issue I was complaining about. I knew if they ever tried to take me to court I could produce my letters as evidence that I was trying to resolve the issue. The eventually took over the municipality from the ANC, fixed my issue, and gave me a 50% reduction on my outstanding balance in return for me settling my account. It was a thoroughly satisfactory experience for me all round. Get behind an independence movement. In the Western Cape that is easy. Independence is the ultimate rejection of government authority. The people of the Western Cape do not have the national government they voted for, and they have zero prospect of ever getting the government they want. Why would anyone opt into that system? Colored and white citizens of the Western Cape are under no obligation to sign up to be racially marginalized, to have their language and culture insulted, and to have their history rewritten before their eyes. Substantial numbers of black Western Cape citizens also support Cape independence, recognizing that their social and economic welfare is dependent on escaping socialism, racial nationalism, corruption and gross incompetence. The dream of a rainbow nation never belonged to the ANC, and it doesn't need to die with it either. If you are outside of the Western Cape, and perhaps KZN, independence might just take a different form. Start your own municipality. Without commenting on the ideological merits of Orania, that is exactly what its population did. Has your road got potholes in it? Get together with your neighbors, fix them, then deduct the cost from your rates. Are the police useless in your area? Hire a security guard and deduct it from your taxes. Get an accountant to do it correctly, then deduct their fee too. Do you have to buy bottled water because the municipal water isn't drinkable? Stop paying for it. Write your own letter. I'll pay for drinking water when it is drinkable. Until things change, the less we pay in tax the better. Changing your mindset. Once you get into the mindset that you have power in every situation, you will find endless ways to improve your circumstances and frustrate the government. Then you have to start holding the to account. You can't just be politically active for one day every 5 years. When did you last speak to your ward councillor, or the mayor? You elected them, they work for you. Make your issues their issues. Mayors are very well paid, most couldn't earn their salary in the private sector, and they are all up for re-election next year. Under the Constitution there are certain concurrent powers held jointly by national and provincial government, such as transport, police, language and culture, housing, agriculture, education, other than tertiary, health and policing. Concurrent powers mean that, where it governs, the can pass its own laws. I am told that this is an aspect of the Constitution which has never been tested, and, were the to pass laws that ran contrary to the national government agenda, that this may cause a constitutional crisis. Music to my ears. Thus far the has backed down from this fight. Why? It must use its majority where it has won. It must take power away from the national government in every possible way it legally can. It must use every means at its disposal, and to the fullest possible extent of the law, including every millimeter of grey area, to carry out the wishes of the electorate that appointed it. At the height of the COVID-19 crisis we saw the best and the worst of the. Administratively and operationally it stood head and shoulders above the rest of South Africa, yet politically it capitulated, obsequiously going, time and time again, against its own better judgment. I stand front and center demanding an independent Western Cape. 53% of the voters in the Western Cape want the same thing. On the 5th of December I will be marching with the coloured community of Cloetsville to the Stellenbosch Town Hall demanding that the Mayor G.C. van Deventer listens to the community's desire for independence, demanding that she passes it along to her political bosses, and that she knows when she needs their votes in 2021, what they want, not what she wants, must be top of the agenda. Put the date in your diary and march with us too. The SIAG will be repeating this action and many others over the coming months until the is forced to listen to us. The is our employee in the Western Cape. Now what are you going to do?